how does that, when you're cutting your wood, assuming you're harvesting your own wood, how do I lay out my bowls? How do you get the most pleasant look from the grain and the character that the wood provides to you? So I thought I'd go through some things and then have a quick little hands-on and showing you when you start to carve out your bowls and how the grain will start to show and maybe what you want to strive for or maybe something you want to avoid. So, can you do the down camera? How does that look? Okay, and so, okay. Let's, wow, that's actually not too bad. I'll go this way, and I got my numbers up. Yeah. All right, so what I did is I cut a cookie out of the tree and just talk a little bit about the wood grain, right? So this is soft maple. Soft maple quite often will have some darker wood in the center. I got some bowls you can come and look at, pass them around or whatever here too. But those are ash bowls where the early wood is darker than the later wood, and that can all add to the artistic look of your bowl. The thing you can do as an artist is you can decide, am I going to put that in the middle at the bottom of the bowl, or would I put it up at the rim, and what's the impact of that? Yep, that one too. So that one would be hickory. But so we talked about wood grain last, was it June or May? And what we got here is, this is a fairly large tree. I didn't even measure it, but I would guess it'd be about maybe 16 to 18 inches, maybe 20 inches across. Now, what typically happens is the pith will always be off center, right? Very rarely do you end up with a tree where the pith is right in the middle. And once you pay attention to that, you'll see that they have a different curve on the annual rings, probably on one side versus the other. And that annual ring can contribute to both the stability of your bowl, how is it going to shrink and how is it going to move, as well as the aesthetics. What's the contrasting wood, or if you have like an oak, you get an ash, some of the other hickories, some of the open grain ones, you can see the grain in them very well. So one of the things that I like to do is when I look at my bowl is I'll say, well, the pith is here, and if I go, and what I did in this red ring here is I circled just one of the annual rings, which happened to be 2 inches from the center on this side, but it was 1.5 inches on this side. So if you are going to cut a bowl out of this side of the log, you're going to have uneven drying when it comes out. Versus if you take this same circle, and we might end up with maybe this half of the bowl looks like it's real consistent, then if we took the bowl out of over here, it's going to dry more uniformly, and you might have some warpage, but it'll be the same on the same side, or excuse me, it'll be similar on each side. So what I did on this side is I looked at the rings themselves as they are away from the pith, because I don't want the pith, right? We'll probably cut 1 inch or 2 right out of the middle. The annual ring goes all the way through there, and that'll contribute to the movement of the wood. However, on this particular one, if you look, the dark wood has a different arc, and that's going out here. So it's not going to be balanced. You have to pick one or the other, either the color of the wood that's in the middle or the annual ring. And that's real typical as well, because just the position to the sun, that maybe maybe it's on the edge of the woods or the edge of your lot, something consistently, and then the darkness inside kind of follows suit. So those are things to keep in mind. And then one last thing is if you're doing like a larger bowl, I'm trying to think if I had one handy, I don't remember. There's one on the table that came out of a big piece of elm. But this in the middle has, we'll call that a tighter radius. So it could be, it could be like, 3 to maybe 6 inch radius. But out here, the grain is going to be straighter because the circle is larger. And these will also contribute to having a more stable object. So if you would take, and actually I'm just going to step over here, little tools that you can use to kind of look at this stuff. Like if you wanted to have a bowl 3 inches or a blank, let's say a 3 inches by 7, we could put that on here and you'll get a feel for how that grain will be on the side of your bowl. If you wanted to have it straighter, so you don't want the tight radius of the inside of the tree, move it to the outside, and that'll give you an idea of what that grain will look like. And that'll help you envision your end product. And this one is a little different. This is 4 by 6.5. Have you ever heard of that golden ratio? So that's like your credit card sizes and stuff like that. It's something that's out there. This is pretty close to that, and that is a very pleasing shape. Not the shape, but the size is very pleasing to the human eye. And there's a lot of examples of this in nature where the size of something has a similar ratio of height and width. So that can help you. So what I did, thanks, Clayton, is I took another chunk of wood and did the same thing. And what I was trying for was, let's see here. So what I was trying for was a nice balance in the wood grain as well as the two-tone of the light wood and the dark wood. And I made 2 wood blanks out of this exact same piece of wood, only on the other side. And I brought those here today, and we'll show you how that turns. And then I have an ash bowl where the darkness is going to be flipped, and it might not be a real contrast in the dark to light, but Ted's got that one here. Why don't you, give me that one, and I'll take this one. So when you're laying it out, you have a choice. Do I want the dark in the bottom, or do I want the dark at the top? And so this one, I was trying to get the grain to be centered, and I was trying to keep the dark ring centered as well. And if you looked at it, this is how I would have laid it out. It would have been laid out like on this log, like right here, right? I also had the advantage that the grain was pretty flat too. So this was a larger piece of wood, and I avoided the tight radius of the inside. Now this one is hickory, and actually now I can't even remember. Is the dark wood on the outside on a hickory, or is it on the inside? No, it's on the inside. Yeah. So what I did on this bowl is I flipped it around. So on this one, it would have been right about here. And when you turn it, then you're exposing all of the sapwood and the lightness, and you end up having 2 dark ears going like that. So those are design decisions that you can make as you're laying it out. Then I'll take those things real quick. And then another little thing that can help if you're trying to determine, where should I cut the bowl here, or should I rotate it more to the side? I actually put a pencil line, and you can see it. It's a light line like right here, and then I'll take a circle and I'll hold it up and so that'll give you that clue on if I'm going to have a balanced contrast in the light to dark wood. And you may end up with, like over here as an example, put that in there. The darkness here kind of goes like this. And so that, it would still be pleasant, it'd still be nice to look at, but it's a little tougher to figure out where to make the bulb light. Any questions? All right. So with this one then, so I'm going to grab the first bulb blank, and it was actually cut out of this same tree that same way. And I think we talked about this before, but I've been wrapping in plastic. I just buy that shrink wrap, and that's been working out really good for me. And by wrapping it in plastic, you can handle it right away. You don't have to wait for the wax to dry, or you don't have to, if it's hot wax, you don't have to wait for it to cool. And I'll wrap my stuff, like if I'm working on it overnight, I'll wrap it in this. And then the other thing I do when I'm turning, I will frequently wrap this after I'm done with the outside. And so while I'm turning the inside, it keeps the outside moist. Because a lot of times the spinning of your wood will either throw the water off or it'll just evaporate through the air movement, and you'll get the checks and the cracks on your bowl. And I've improved my success rate quite a bit by wrapping the outside of my wet bowls while I'm turning the inside. So. Alrighty, so I'm thinking, oops, they're all locked. I wasn't thinking. Huh. Is there a trick? I match up the numbers. I don't know. Is there different threes? No? Over there. Huh. Well, got one? Thank you, sir. What's that? Okay. Now another thing that I've done is tried to follow the annual rings as I'm shaping the outside of the bowl, and that'll give you a different effect too for the grain, like on the inside, on the outside. Now this one is has got the pith in the middle, or excuse me, it's outside. And so you wouldn't do it that way. If this was live edge, you know, obviously that would be out in front here then. So I roughed this out yesterday, and if you can see, yeah, you can see it pretty good. So here's the dark interior wood. It's going to be lighter on the outside. It's a pretty fresh tree. I got a little bit of water spray off it, but not a lot. And yeah, I did. And and I got wood chips under areas I thought I'd never have this early. So it's casualty of our hobby, right? Feels pretty good. So if you're trying to play off the grain, I would encourage you not to go too deep right away. And, you know, like on a bowl like this, you still have some opportunity to use the grain in the design and base the shape around your design. So if you go and you do a couple of shallow cuts and keep them nice and smooth, I think I got to go a little deeper yet. You'll start to see the color will pop out, and you can decide if you want a deeper bowl or if you want a shallower bowl to help highlight the different colors of the grain. Now I can see right in the middle I got about a 1-inch circle of dark, and one more pass and we'll stop and take a look at it to see how it's doing. And let's see here. So there we go. So now you can see it pretty good. But here's the center. And so that's pretty close. I forgot to mention what I did yesterday as I was setting these up is I put 4 marks. I put 4 marks on the wood blank. So I start out between centers, and I put a mark on the high side of the dark on both sides of the bowl, like that. And then I'll put a mark on the low side of the dark on both sides of the bowl. And you can use your finger, you can use a stick. I find sometimes it's easier just to use the tool rest. And actually, I wonder if I could probably turn it around this way. So what I would do is, you know, you hold your stick, and so as this line comes around, you just see, okay, that one is touching my finger, so I'll go 180 degrees. And right now I'm about 1/4 of an inch off. So if I still had it between centers, that's enough for me where I would probably adjust it. I would like mine to be less than 1/4 of an inch difference on those 2 high points. Because what's going to happen is as you shape your bowl first of all, it might not go in at the angle you might not, the wood's inconsistent, or you might not have it lined up straight. But the straighter you get it started, the better result you'll end up with. And so then on the back side, I'll do the same thing. You know, I'll have something that touches this line, and then I'll go 180 on the low spot, and I'm like a 1/4 inch off again. So I would loosen the tailstock, and I would just shift it down, you know, usually about a half of what you're trying to gain. So let's say I was a 1/2 of an inch off. I would move the top 1/4 of an inch down, if that makes sense. Because your other point, 180 degrees away, will come back the other way. So that's how you're gonna get that balanced. Okay? So I guess I'm actually pretty pleased with this. I have balance. I got balance both left and right, and up and down. So I would prefer to have more dark in the bottom of my bowl. And that's coming along nicely. So it's expanded now where it's getting close. I can see, you know, the outside mark and the inside mark are getting pretty close together because the thickness of the wall is starting to get to where I want it to be. It did shift. It seems like it's shifted just a little bit. Actually, not too bad, though. It depends on what mark you go to, because here's like a blemish that sticks out of the curve. But anyway. I might, in all honesty, I might leave it like this if I was turning it, because I think that's a nice balance. You know, if that's the case, you could either jam chuck this and reverse it, or you could try to clean up the outside while it's in here. But I like that shape. It's a nice dish. Probably not, you know, if I'm being critical, I'm a little bit high in the middle, so it's a little too flat on the bottom, you know, like 1 inch. So that might be something to keep in mind. And then remember, when you're using your gouges, small gouges have small tear out, so you can get a better finish. You can get a better finish with your smaller gouges. So if this was dry, I would definitely be using a smaller gouge than what I was. But the smaller bite that you take out of the wood, the better result you're going to get with the surface of the wood. And also, I guess you could turn it to thickness. It's something you would have to decide probably up front, right? Do I want to leave it 1 inch thick and let it dry and warp? Turn it again, or do I want to get this to the final thickness? In fact, why don't I do that? As long as this is just a. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually I'll cut this to final thickness. You can maybe make a mental note of how much dark wood I have in there and the shape it is. And then I'll go in right to the 3/8 of an inch side wall, and we'll see what we end up with. Oops, I forgot I don't have one of these at home. Another good thing to keep in mind when you're finishing your bowls, and again, this is still wet, so this could be actual. It's not going to help as much as if it was dry. But remember the orientation of your grain and how the direction that you should be, scraping and finishing your cut. So if you take, why don't you go top view? So if you take your bowl and right now the grain is running sideways, right? So on the outside of your bowl, the best cut is going to be from the small diameter toward the rim, right? Because you're cutting downhill. And so on the inside, it's going to be from the rim into the middle, because your grain is going this way, and we just cut it at an angle on that side. So if you wanted to have less fuzzies and tear out, the best scrape that you're going to get is going to be from the outside going in. And I would also, if you're doing bowls, I would recommend, like, the bigger the scraper, the more mass, the easier it is to control and the better cut you're going to get. I actually picked up a big chunk of steel off of Penn State, those Benjamin Bests, which are normally kind of a low-end tool, but if you're only using it to, like, clean up your last couple of cuts on your bowl, they work great. It's just that you got to sharpen them a little more often. And you can put the curve that you want on there. I like this curve. It's big enough where it helps smooth out any of my tool marks. The Benjamin Best that I have is actually, what is that? It's got to be about probably inch and a half. So it's got a full bead on the top. So it's it's like a half a circle versus this is kind of a quarter circle, quarter arc. Negative rake scraper. So what I usually end up doing is I put the tool rest up a little higher, and I'll hold my handle up higher so that in effect the presentation of the tool is at a downward angle. And I probably wouldn't be doing much scraping right now because the bowl is almost at final thickness. So my scraping, at least on the rim side, I would have done before I did the bottom to the final thickness. And that's good enough for now. Oh, look at that. I exposed some ratty grain. So that's got a defect in the bark. And, oh, here it is. So this one came out of the same tree, a slightly different spot. This one came out of the top, or I should say the bark side. And yep, that would work. And so this one actually came off right here. Uh-oh. This would be, yes. The short answer is no. I mean, I've had it pull off, but I think I would actually, I knew going into it that it could be light. In fact, this one I didn't measure very well last night because I'm like 1/8 of an inch too big. Huh. So, the third blank I was going to show you. But I can show you what I was going to do here anyways, but this one is pretty much all sapwood. But I was going to show you what I did was I took one of the annual rings and I followed it with the magic marker all the way around. And that can be another tool for you as you're setting it on your lathe to help you with the alignment. So again, when this was between centers, I massaged the angle, even though I cut it out and it was a nice round blank. If I could have put it on here and it would have turned almost balanced right away, but then the grain wasn't balanced, right? So I took a balanced blank and I ended up tipping it just so that I could get the grain alignment on both sides. So yeah, I have a gauge for that, and I obviously didn't use it yesterday. And then I forgot my wrench. I knew I'd forget something this morning. You know how you're going through all of your normal items. So this is a piece of, and I've been enjoying turning the ash lately. It's so easy to get. And everybody's like, sure, you could have that. I did run into one person that said, you can have it, but you can't leave any sawdust in my yard. And I looked at him, I going, I don't need it that bad. Uh-oh. I guess I didn't measure this one right either. I'm going to have to get myself one of Jerry's rigs. I thought I had or maybe that's what I did. This was like 13 hours ago that I did this. You can't expect me to, yeah, that's too small for that one. Can't expect me to remember everything I did yesterday. And I better check this, make sure it fits on here, because I might be back to between centers. Look at that, it fits. This ash has been seasoning for quite a while. I don't remember when I cut it, but it's getting close to a year. And I'd had it wrapped in the plastic, and maybe a half a dozen pieces were wrapped like that. The 3 that I turned already had a little bit of checking on the surface through, with the grain. But they were all salvageable. So this plastic basically kept my bowl blanks good for about 9 months. I ended up making smaller bowls because of the checks, but they were still, the blanks were large enough that I could do that. I did on a couple pieces, but not bad at all. Yeah, not bad at all. Because, I rounded them out with the bandsaw, so I had all fresh wood, and I wrapped them right away. And I didn't stack them tight. I still had spacers between them. But if you think you're going to get to them, inside of 3 or 4 months, that's a nice way to go. I got to try the glue too. So I don't know. I think I only saw like 1 or 2 hands go up when talked about school glue or Elmer's glue, but that stuff's $10 a gallon, and Anchor Seal is like $35 now if you buy a single gallon. All right. So Elmer's white glue, Tom Mahoney, and I don't know, there's probably a bunch of others. They've been using that to seal the end grain now. And they'll add about 10% water to make it thinner. $10.88 at Walmart for a gallon. Anchor Seal is, I'm pretty sure it's over $30. Oh, before I start out. So on this particular one, I had black line that's following the grain, the annual ring, right? And then you have this dark wood in the middle on the ash tree, and this green line is kind of following that. So if you look, I got 2 different lines. I don't know if you can see that. Here, let me just move the lathe. Right there, you see that? All right. Yeah. So on this, right here, you can see that the dark wood is right up at the rim of the bowl now, and the annual ring is about, half an inch down. And then as you follow it down over here, the dark wood drops below the annual ring. So again, it's just something you keep in mind. You may want to center the dark wood, or you may want to keep the annual rings. Either way is nice. And I'm just going to cut into this fairly shallow. This will cut a lot slower because it's almost dry ash. But I like ash. There's a lot of things you can do with it, except wood burn. So I was doing some wood burning, and it's brutal because your pen tip wants to go fast and slow every time it catches a gap in the open grain. And then if you're, like you're signing on the bottom or anything else like that, it's going to be very sporadic. Looks like you had a shaky hand as you're signing your name. Like you either had too much cup of coffee or you didn't drink your coffee yet. By the way, I don't remember. So one of the things they're going to have, and I was thinking about putting in the drawing today, is a passive moisture drying container. So when it comes time and your number gets called, if you're interested in a passive moisture drying container, let me know, and I'll put that into the wood raffle. Yeah, it's cutting a lot slower. Nice, hard, dry wood. So again, what I did when I was mounted between centers yesterday is I kept dropping and tipping this bowl and I was working off the annual rings, trying to get them to be both the same. And sometimes the tree cooperates and sometimes it doesn't. I got a knot in here, which was an unknown. But a couple more passes, and then you'll get a pretty good feel for how how the grain wants to emerge. Yeah, you can take that wet maple and you can cut out the whole bowl with one sharpening. And you grab something like dry oak or dry ash, and you don't get near the cutting out of them. This one's already getting dull. And I just swapped it out. So it looks like we're off center, and it looked pretty good from the end grain. So I think that branch that was in there that I cut out already made the annual rings inconsistent, so they're not concentric. But you can see the grain patterns coming out of here. We got a kind of a loop going here, but the low spot on the grain is right here. So ideally, this part of the grain, you're aiming to get it right in the bottom of the bowl. So I'll take a couple more passes and we'll see how it goes. And we may not be able to save that one, but then we'll say that we cut it based on the color, not the grain, right? And there's nothing wrong with having the grain, unbalanced. A lot of times you're going to run into a piece of wood that's beautiful. It's got, chatoyance and quilting and waves through the grain, and it'll turn out great. But if you find yourself in front of a really nice, clear, clean log, the character that you would be able to pull out of that might only be the grain. And in that particular case, there's two things to remember. Is one, the grain can be part of your element, and two, the shape of the bowl will always be there, right? So if you had, like box elder, the red's there, and it looks beautiful when you first turn it, and then 3 years down the road, it's just brown. If you had a nice shape, it's still a beautiful bowl, right? But if you stopped to try to save that red, because if you cut it a little bit more, it would disappear, and you had a slightly odd shape, or maybe not a real smooth transition from one curve into another, then you end up with a brown bowl that you could have had a slightly better shape with. So, kind of keep that stuff in mind. So this one, I didn't actually get to the white yet. So I think I'm going to have to, I should be close, but I was hoping to punch through the dark. I'm going to have to get to another gouge too. And then I talked about it before, but a lot of times, we're trying to decide on the fly, what's the shape going to be? And as you're cutting your wood and it's getting, thinner and thinner, and sides are starting to get tapered and uniform, it kind of dictates what you come up with as you're turning it. But I would also encourage you to start at the beginning and try to get a shape in your mind before you start cutting. Because that'll help a lot in both, your skills, exercising your eye-hand coordination to develop that shape. And it'll kind of help. I just punched through it right there, so you can kind of see it's getting a little light. But, and you're good. You're good. So I had this little card here before. Actually, where did that go? Was there a piece of cardboard floating around? There it is. I found it. So you tend to forget, what's the ratio of the size of the rim to the base of your bowl. And these little chains like this can really help highlight, one, the simplicity, and then two, maybe how we don't realize it in our own mind as well as we could if something else helped. So that across the top is the width of the bowl, and then the red numbers on the side is the depth. So it's not uncommon for us to have wood blanks over here that are 3 inches deep. And if it was 8 inches in diameter, I put the chain on the 8, and then the 8 over here, and right now that's a 4-inch bowl, and that's the curve that would hit, right? And that's a pleasant curve, and you can have variation to that. But if your blank is only 3, then you got to take the chain up, and it gets a little shallower, and it's still a pleasant curve. But if you would measure, and I don't know if I can do that easily here, but if you would measure, the width from this point to this point is 2 inches. So you would have a 2-inch base on an 8-inch bowl if you followed this curve. And those are the types of things you got to keep in mind as you're cutting down the outsides. Leave room or anticipate, the size of the bowls. So, and the other thing is, there's almost no new shapes out there. I mean, you think about pottery, and there's been urns, and you've had ancient civilizations creating vessels. It's like we're not coming up with a new shape, but you can go out and you can see all those. You can find them in all kinds of historical documents, and those might be the inspiration for one of your turnings as well. Actually, I'm going to swap this out. I tell you, get a fresh edge, what a difference that makes on hardwood. So that's the other obvious tip that everybody knows already, but don't shy away from your grinding wheel. So does anybody have a bottom feeder? How many people use bottom feeders? 1, 2, 3. So are you familiar with those? Trying to think what we got here. So the end of this. Why don't I do this? It wants my shirt. So the end of it is like the cutting angle is like this. And wouldn't need it on this bowl because this bowl is fairly shallow. But I tell you, it sure is nice when you end up with some of these that have the closed rims or the deep ones. And it allows I can hold the tool, less than 45 degrees out at the end. And it'll allow you to clean that up. They're a little bit tricky. You got to kind of get used to it and make sure you have a couple of practice runs before you get to the final thickness so that you can get the handle of it. But if you look, I'm going in, not fairly straight, and it works pretty good for cleaning up your last couple of tool marks. And if you had a little bigger gouge, the 5/8 would probably make a better bottom feeder than the 1/2 inch. But boy, that's saved me a lot of work on some of the others, on some of the other bowls that I put out using that bottom feeder. So here you can see that the grain, it might not be real obvious on the TV, but so the darkness is kind of coming in like this. So we didn't hit that as nice as I would have liked. And some of that has to do with right up front we saw it was inconsistent with the grain. So if you look at the green line again, that was very inconsistent, but it ports over to an oddball shaped colors on the inside. As we got a little deeper, the grain started to balance out a little bit better because here's the center of the bowl. There, gotta go this way. And now the grain itself is almost hitting the center. This would be the low spot in the grain. But again, those are things that you can play around with. The cleaner the wood, so the less defects, knots. Maybe like on an old trunk, you end up having kind of an irregular shape, not a round trunk. The cleaner the tree, the more it contributes to a nice balanced grain on there. So they're usually easier to find than curly trees or burls and stuff like that. So again, I got some of these as examples. Feel free to, I think they went around already, but pardon me? Yeah, so what I did on this one, I don't know if you could see it, but so this one I tried to burn, which I'm telling myself I'm never going to burn unless I burn the whole thing like Cleet did. But I'm not going to use my wood tip pen on these anymore because the grain really makes for a tough line. Lines don't come out very smoothly. But I sculpted the outside. Ted just pointed that out. And if I remember right, I just took the little 2-inch pad, basically. Something fairly aggressive, like maybe 100, a fresh 100 grit, maybe an 80 grit, probably 100, and just randomly flipped it around and cut the bumps into it. And so I'm expecting when I'm done with this one that that should jump out a little bit more. That'll pop out. I also tried to keep this texture inside of the two borders. So that should contribute to part of the design when it's done. The varnish, I don't know if I'm going to do Danish oil poly or whatever yet, but that'll also help accentuate a smooth finish from the textured. But that's kind of easy to do if you got a 2-inch grinder. Make sure you get a fresh pad on there, fresh chunk of sandpaper, and you can kind of use it like a sculpture stamping tool, kind of knock stuff out. Again, that one was symmetrical. The dark was in the bottom, and I tried to do the same with some of the closed top vessels as well. So this was the class. In fact, this one was kind of the picture that we showed last May. But yeah, Kelly did the Calabash Bowl demo, and I'm like, I got to do some more of those. And I ended up liking them. I knocked out a bunch of these last winter. So now I just got to finish sanding them. But I decided not to put bottoms on them. So they're just flat. And there's a contingent of people that like that rustic feel and look. So when you put them down, it'll never just stop. So they like that. So it's not right or wrong. And I think that's all I had. Okay. So Ted said he's been using the water-based poly, and he likes the colors that he's getting out of it. Yep. I think that's very clear compared to any of the oil-based. And so if you have a grain that you like a lot, or some color of the wood that you like, I would recommend it. Yeah, lacquer is another good option if you like lacquer. So, clear lacquer and the water-based poly. And I've had good luck with the water-based poly when I spray the last coat. So I got a can of it, and so you can put you can paint it on, and then kind of take off the dust nibs, or maybe put 2 brush coats on there, and then if you sand it lightly and you put the top coat on with the spray can, it really comes out nicely. Any questions? All right. Well, thank you. Glad to be back in business.